Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and this is the ThieAudio Oracle, finally. So this is a tribrid IM that came out last year around the same time that a bunch of other tribrids were really hitting the market. And I gotta be honest, this is one of the IMs that I've had the most requests to review, and finally I'm able to do it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of a review copy, and frankly, I was a little bit concerned about buying it for myself because of, well, we'll talk about the physical stuff. It looks a lot like a ThieAudio Monarch, which I had trouble fitting in my ear. So I was concerned about spending $500 on an IM that wouldn't fit me. But thankfully, Huck from the Discord server, and if you're not a part of the Discord server, I do have that linked in the description down below. Huck, he loaned me his Oracle, and for the past few weeks, I've been living with and listening to this IM, and figured before I give it back to him this weekend, I might as well give it a full review just in time for ThieAudio to announce a Mark II, which is true. That's actually a thing that's happened. But for now, we're going to talk here about the ThieAudio Oracle Original. So, like I mentioned up top, this is a tribrid IM. That means it's got 2 EST tweeters, it's got 2 balanced armatures, and 1 dynamic driver. I just have 3 fingers up here, but that's a total of 5 drivers. And the price on this thing is around $540. So definitely not cheap, kind of fits in that mid-fi territory space, but puts it up against some pretty interesting competitors that I was interested to see how this stacks up. So for the past few weeks, I've been listening to it versus the Kinda Lava, and also my personal favorite, the Moondrop Blessing. So I can come here and give you a review, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So like all my other reviews, this is a live stream. If you're here now, you're chilling in the live chat, I see you. We're going to have a conversation after this review. For now, I'm just going to dive through the review. We'll talk about the sound. We'll talk about the physical stuff a little bit. We'll talk about the sound, and then I'll do those comparisons with those other IMs that I was listening with against the Oracle. And then at the end of that, yeah, we'll have a little bit of a back and forth conversation. Hopefully I can answer all of your questions about the Oracle. But otherwise, yeah, I've got links in the description if you want to check it out. But let's dive to the table and start talking about the physical stuff here on the Oracle. As you can see, I am not surrounded by the box and all the stuff that comes inside the box because, well, this is just a loaner unit and it doesn't come with the box. In fact, I think it was actually pretty clever, but Huck sent it to me without the cable. So the cable that you see here is not even the stock cable. That said, I have used it. The Oracle comes with the same stock cable that the Monarch, the original Monarch, comes with, so I'm pretty familiar with that cable. So use your imagination and imagine that I'm talking about that cable as I describe the cable. This is not that cable. This is a different cable. But the cable that the Oracle comes with is, it's a little on the thick side and a little stiff, but it definitely feels nice and premium. It's an all-white cable, obviously. I'm not talking about the one on this table. It's generally a pretty decent cable, though. But I do have one big gripe about the stock cable that comes with the Oracle and some of ThieAudio's earlier models is the termination. So you can actually get it in a standard 3.5 millimeter or a standard 4.4 millimeter termination, and that's personally how I would recommend it. But they also sell it in a 2.5 termination that comes with these really bulky adapters that I'm not a big fan of. So I guess I can use this opportunity to complain about that for one last time. But again, that's not the cable that I'm using it. More importantly, more to the point, we can actually talk about the real earpieces that I do have sitting here on the table with me. And like I mentioned kind of in that intro, this thing physically, visually shares a lot in common with the ThieAudio Monarch. And for that reason, I was actually really concerned about how this thing would fit in my ears, because the Monarch is an IM that frankly just did not fit in my ears. Good news up front, these things actually fit me. I was actually pretty surprised. The build on these looks identical to the Monarch, but it is in fact a different shell and it fits my ear quite a bit better. We'll do a little fit test in a little bit, but I'll talk quickly about the aesthetic on this, which unfortunately I don't like. You know, this is very much like the original Monarch and not my favorite aesthetic. I think I described it as kind of like a school art project. It just looks a little accidental, and I don't know, it's certainly well made. They're, fairly lightweight plastic shells. It feels well made, but aesthetically it's certainly not my bag. That said, I guess we can now talk about the fit on these things as I throw them into my ears. So As I alluded to, they are smaller than the earpieces on the Monarch, which is a good thing certainly for me. You can see that they're still, I would say, on like kind of like the medium large side, so they're not small earpieces, but as far as my ear is concerned, I think the size is really not a problem at all. That said, well, okay, before I get to that point, we'll just say that, like, you know, the fit comfort is actually really good because of the size, and then the fit security is also excellent. Like, these things will plug in my ears, they will stay put all night throughout a night's sleep. You're not going to have issues with these things coming undone. But the one caveat here is that, and I'm not sure if it's because of like venting or some other aspect of the design, whenever I fit these things in my ears, I very frequently will get like pressure imbalances between the left and the right side. And because of that, it just means that when I'm fitting this thing, like it feels like it's not venting. And so what I do is I'll put it in my ear, and then I have to come over here and kind of like lift it to break the seal. And then that will balance out the pressure between my left and right ears. If I don't do that, it's actually a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, not like pain uncomfort, but it's just, you know, it doesn't quite feel right. So there is a little bit of fiddliness there to the ingress of this IM, but again, comfort-wise and fit security-wise, it's actually pretty excellent. So I was happy to see that, and kind of, you know, again, I was fearful of spending the $500 on this IM for the past year because I was worried about that fit, and then it turned out the fit wasn't actually a problem. So, well, there you go. But yeah, those I think about as much as I can probably talk about the physical stuff. Again, we don't have the box here, but we can dive into talking about the sound here on the ThieAudio Oracle. I'm trying to give you a nice visual on there. There you go. That looks nice. So, sound. General sound signatures we'll start with. I'll talk about then what I like, what I didn't like, and then we'll get into the comparisons. But the general sound signature on this, I to be honest, wasn't totally sure exactly what to expect, but the sound that I get on this is kind of a lean neutral. It does have a mild Harman style scoop to the lower mid-range, which gives it a bit of leanness. And then it's got, you know, a sub-bass boost like you kind of see on a lot of these modern tuned IMs, where you've got enough sub-bass boost that occasionally this will sound like a bassy set, but it's never really a thick or a warm sound or anything like that. Frankly, the bass really is quite sub-oriented. And then up top in the frequency response, like the upper mid-range is definitely not pushed very far forward, but you do get a fair amount of treble brightness to it, which actually was, I don't know, a little bit surprising. I would say it definitely comes across as a very lively sound for sure. So yeah, just the overall tonal balance I would describe as kind of like a brighter, less contrasty, and more lively version of a Harman tune, if you're familiar with what that means. So yeah, that's the general tonality here. So let's talk about what are the things that I like about them. Oh, we got to get that view. What are the things that I like about the sound here on the Oracle? And definitely there is a lot that I like about the sound here. I'm getting the picture. I'm starting to understand why people were asking me about this IM. So that tonal balance I described is actually very, very nice. A little bit bright up top, you know that's going to be kind of my thing. And then mostly, you know, mid-range focus with that sub bass, that kind of like party bass in the bottom. I love that. Okay. So yeah, it has like just generally a nice sparkly, airy brightness to the sound. It's got really good treble extension on it as well. And then the bass there, I would say, is enough to be fun. It's definitely above neutral sub bass, but there's zero bloat. There's zero worry about any bloat on this thing. The other nice thing about the Oracle, and I think this is coming from that, you know, brighter than average tune, is that I think that you also get an above average head stage. Probably significantly above average head stage, to be honest. So, you know, I don't talk about soundstage a ton in IMs, but I think that the Oracle, if you're looking for an IM that has something approaching soundstage, the Oracle is definitely an IM that does a good job of that. You get really very good separation between instruments, really nice, strong sense of imaging and positioning and just that layering, right? And I think you also get a decent sense of detail that comes across the set. And then, of course, you've got that bass, which is dynamic driver bass, and it gives you all the satisfying rumble from that you would want. So, again, there's a lot here that I like about the Oracle, but I do have to get picky, and there are some things that I don't love about the sound. So let's talk about those things. Not a lot, but I do have to get picky, okay? That bass that I just described, right? it is a little bit lean in the mid bass for my personal taste, right? The benefit of a tune like this is that you can get a lot of bass without it being bloaty or smeary. I personally, I enjoy a lot of bass like that sometimes, but it's not my preference. I actually can deal with a little bit less bass, but having a little bit more mid bass body. And this one, unfortunately, I think it's just a little bit lean in that mid bass region, which can, give certain music. I generally hate to make genre-based generalizations, but think of like classic rock, where a lot of it is like kind of recorded a little bit thin, and a lot of the body is going to come from, things like the bass guitar and the kick drums and stuff like that, rather than like a lot of electronic piped in low end. And with some music like that, like Fleetwood Mac was what I was listening to specifically, it can unfortunately come across a little bit thin here on the Oracle. Again, if I'm being picky. And overall, I mentioned that the bass quality on this is actually pretty good, nice and satisfying. You get a good sense of rumble, but it really does, I think, because of that mid bass scoop, it does come across, I don't know, you miss some of that physicality that you might get in a fuller mid bass tune. Okay. So there's that. I already mentioned the tonality that I described really liking quite a bit. It does lack a little bit of body because of that bass tune. Again, it never gets anywhere near congested, but it can also, depending on the music that you're listening to, I mentioned that it's got that better than average head stage. If you are listening to music that doesn't have a lot of sub bass content in it, sometimes that head stage can sound really wide, but a little bit narrow, right? The bass, I find, is really what contributes to kind of like the depth of head stage. And because this bass is so focused in the sub bass, again, if you're listening to music that doesn't have a lot of content there, that wide stereo image can still come across a little bit two-dimensional. And then the last nitpick that I will say is that the treble can sometimes actually come across a little bit on the splashy side for me. Again, I'm getting picky. It's really not bad at all in terms of its splashiness. It's not like a sharp treble or anything like that, but I would also say that it's not like a safe treble. If you're concerned about treble spiciness, I would say this is like on the edge. So those are my general thoughts here on the ThieAudio Oracle. Definitely a lot to like. But how does it compare to some of my other favorite IMs? And now these IMs I'm going to bring in are kind of all over the place in terms of price range, but I feel like, well, the Kind of Lava, this is one that people have definitely asked me about specifically to compare it with the Oracle. So that's why that one's in. And then the Moondrop Blessing 2 would be kind of, that's like my default favorite brightish neutral tuned IM. So I figure I'd bring that one in. So that's what we've got here. The ThieAudio Oracle, $540, a Tribrid IM. We've got the $320 Moondrop Blessing 2, which is just a hybrid. There's no ESTs in this one. And then here we've got, of course, the oh my gosh, the Let Sure. I was tripping on how many different names they've got. The Let Sure EJ07M Kind of Lava. $670, the most expensive on the bunch on the table. But it is often discounted, so I don't even know what I would say its normal street price is. It's probably not too far off the Oracle, if I'm honest. Also a Tribrid. So there you go. All right, those are the three units we're going to talk about. We'll talk about the signature, the techs, and I'll even talk about the form factor before we get into my final score on the Oracle. So the Oracle, like we just described, tuning-wise, it's a lean neutral. It's got a sub-bass boost with a bit of brightness up top. In comparison, the Kind of Lava is kind of a warm neutral. It's definitely fuller in that lower mid-range. It does have some bass boost as well. And I would say the bass is a little bit more mid-oriented, but it's still mostly, the bass boost is still mostly sub-oriented. Up top, in contrast to this, I would say that this is actually, the Kind of Lava comes across a smidge on the dark side. So the treble, I would say, is actually of the bunch the safest. And then the Moondrop Blessing 2, this for me is just neutral. Like it's nearly perfect tuning as far as I'm concerned. It does have a little bit of forwardness in the vocals, but it's got a little bit of lower mid-range warmth to it. And to be honest, like my frequency response target is basically based on the Blessing 2. So no surprise there. I am quite in love with the tuning on that set. Okay, so that's how you compare it in terms of tuning. To be honest, I'm a little hesitant to rank them, but I would rank them probably like this. I would say that the they all have really excellent tuning, but the Blessing 2 is still my tonal preference. The kind of lava is a little bit warm tilted, again, a little bit dark tilted for my preferences, and then the Oracle is a little bit lean in the mid bass, so they both kind of like make a little bit of sacrifices versus my absolute preference, but really all of them are quite excellent. But yeah, let's talk about the technical aspects. They're quite different. So like I just got done describing here with the Oracle, this has a really wide stereo image, definitely above average staging, and on the bunch on the table, it's really not even close. If you're just looking for a really wide stereo image, the Oracle is the one that takes the cake here. I think you also get really good bass, and just when the music plays it, you get just, I don't know, a lot of wow factor, I suppose, is the layman's version of it, and it just becomes a really satisfying and impressive set. But it is a little bit inconsistent in that way, because if you're listening to music that doesn't have a lot of sub-bass content, it can come across a little bit flat. And then again, the treble can come across sometimes a little bit on the splashy side. In contrast, up here with the Kinda Lava, I would actually say that the stereo image on the Kinda Lava is a little bit narrower than average. So while this is wider than average, this is narrower than average, can kind of give you a sense. But really you do get excellent bass here on the Kinda Lava, not just in the sub bass, but even like the mid bass is just about on target for me in terms of my preference. Plenty of body, but even more than just the tuning, there's like a physicality to the bass here on the Kinda Lava that I think is kind of next level. Like, it is a reason to seek out this IM, despite it not being an especially bassy set. So yeah, it's just kind of like a good, consistent all-arounder performer. And then the Moondrop Blessing 2, honestly, like, given the price difference, you might expect it to be pretty outclassed, but to be honest, I feel like the Blessing 2 hangs in there, even in the technical aspects. Really just fantastic mid-range resolution. That's really what the Blessing 2 stands out with. Also get, I would say, pretty decent, pretty solid bass texture. Again, it's not a bassy set, but the bass curve on it is about exactly perfect to what I like, so you get a nice mid-bass body to it. Decent sense of texture there. I would say where the Blessing 2 is a little bit on the weak side will be in the air frequencies, okay? The treble rolls off sooner than it does on these sets, and the effect of that is that, certainly in like the technical aspect, is like certain music that you might be listening to with, you know, hi-hats, cymbals, just that high frequency percussion stuff, where on these sets you might hear like the full weight of the metallic tang. Here on the Blessing 2, it can sometimes just come across not quite there, not quite right. So that's where the Blessing 2 is a little bit weak. So that's the technical comparison. Now finally we'll talk about the form factor. For that, we will zoom in on these things. So the Oracle is actually the only one well, okay, that's not true. This is an all plastic shell. I was about to say it's the only one that's a plastic shell, but the Blessing 2 is mostly plastic as well. But yeah, it is an all plastic shell. I think aesthetically it's a bit much for me. It's a little bit on the busy side and not my preference, but fit, security, pretty excellent on this set. My biggest issue with the physical stuff here on the Oracle is going to come down to that seal and that pressure relief that I feel like it doesn't quite get right, and it makes it a little bit extra fiddly when I fit it, but once it's fit, it's quite good. The Kinda Lava, in contrast, has got an all metal shell. It's like an aluminum, I assume. Aesthetically, I feel like it's a little bit understated. Like, I know it's red, which is maybe weird to say that red is understated, but I feel like the pattern here is actually kind of difficult to see unless you get light on it just right, and I'm definitely failing to right now. I don't know. I feel like they could have... I've seen some better looking versions of the EJ07M, and the Kinda Lava, yeah, it looks decent, but whatever. Fit wise though, I would say that the ingress egress is perfectly easy. Comfort is perfectly easy. It's nice and smooth on all sides. Definitely had zero issues with comfort here on the Kinda Lava. The only issues I did have was a little bit with fit security, and for me that just took swapping out cables and swapping out tips, to be honest, and then I actually got a fit that I'm quite pleased with, but this one took a little bit more work to get that fit security. And then finally, the Moondrop Blessing 2. I feel like I still really like the aesthetics of this set. You know, this came out a couple of years ago, but I still really like the all clear plastic shell. It is a completely solid plastic, which is a little bit different than the Oracle, and it gives it this glass-like look. So I'm a fan of it. Fit-wise, this is, I would say, medium, large, kind of similar to the Oracle. So there are some warnings about the fit here on the Blessing 2. I gotta be honest, like if the Blessing 2 fits you, the Oracle will probably fit you, and if the Oracle will probably fit you, I think the Blessing 2 will fit you, so there's not really much of a warning there. I think the kind of lava would be the one that's the safest fit, but the upside to having a somewhat larger fit like this is that fit security on the Blessing 2 is excellent. And for my ears, maybe my ears have just become Blessing 2 ears, I find that it is a very, very good, well-fitting IEM. So I think that's going to do it for my thoughts here on the ThieAudio Oracle. I'm trying to untangle this cable while I hold it up to my head, but of course I've got to give it a score. So out of 5 stars, the ThieAudio Oracle, finally, having reviewed it now just in time for the Mark II to come out, I'm going to give it a very, very solid 4 stars out of 5. I think the set has a lot going for it. It is a lot of fun, and like I mentioned, with some music, it's just like has a lot of wow factor that even like the Blessing 2 and the Kind of Lava will lack. So I feel like at its best, this thing can sound more exciting and engaging than those sets. It's just a little bit inconsistent because of that lower mid-range thinness. And then again, the treble can sometimes be a little bit on the splashy side. And then again, if I'm being nitpicky, that fit, you know, having to fiddle with the fit and the seal can be a little bit of a detractor. But overall, I think this is a really good set. And if you're interested in checking it out, I do have a link in the description down below. But warning, ThieAudio just this morning, I think, announced a Mark II version of this. So if you always have to have the newest thing, maybe hold off. But yeah, those are my thoughts here on the ThieAudio Oracle. If you're interested in checking it out, again, link in the description down below. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, etc., and join the Discord server, which I've also got linked down below. I'm there way too much, always chatting, hanging out, and we've got good people there, like Huck, chatting about audio stuff and chatting about Can Jam, which is coming up this weekend. And if you're going to be there, maybe I'll see you. Otherwise, yeah, if you're here live, hang out, we'll have a chat. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next super review. All right, let me